Hey guys, tonight we're setting off on a dusty, winding road that thousands walked before you. Shoes worn thin, hearts hopeful, and maps, well, let's just say not especially helpful. You're a medieval pilgrim now, heading out on foot toward one of the holiest destinations in Christendom. Maybe Canterbury, maybe Santiago, maybe just the next town with a famous toenail of a saint. You've left home behind with nothing but a sack of bread, a scallop badge, and a prayer tucked into your belt. Before we begin tonight's journey through history, I have a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying this peaceful corner of the past, please consider giving the video a like or subscribing to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming nighttime adventures. It truly helps this little channel grow, and it means so much to me. If you're still awake enough to type a few words, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. I find it so heartwarming to see history gently unfolding across time zones, quietly shared together. I sincerely hope this historical story is gentle enough to ease you into sleep, but there's always a small risk. It might be too interesting. And if you do happen to stay awake through the whole thing, at least you'll walk away with a bit of new knowledge. And if that's what keeps you up tonight, well, I'd say that's worth it. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the morning chill just as the sky starts to pinken. The road ahead is brown, stony, and rutted by the wooden wheels of ox carts that pass through in the night. Your boots crunch softly on the frost-kissed dirt, and behind you, the chapel bells toll one last time, a quiet blessing, or maybe a gentle warning. Your breath puffs like smoke from a chimney as you trudge past the edge of your village, your home growing smaller with every step. There's a nervous flutter in your chest. Pilgrimage is part holy duty, part personal dare, and part escape from that neighbor who keeps borrowing your tools and returning them broken. You've never been farther than the next hamlet, and now you're walking clear across the kingdom to see bones. But they're sacred bones, miraculous ones, the kind that heal goiters and maybe even guilt. You tighten the cords on your pack, which already feels too heavy, and shift your shoulder awkwardly. The strap squeaks against your tunic. The sun peeks over the tree line. A skinny dog trots across the road ahead and pauses to scratch itself with dramatic flair, then vanishes into the brush. The wind smells faintly of garlic and something less charming. You pass a woman selling turnips from a cart and nod politely. She spits in the road in reply, not rudely, just practically, dusty blessings. At the edge of the woods, you pause to consider the way ahead. There's no signpost, no mile markers, no Google Maps. All you've got is a vague sense that if you follow the path with more footprints and fewer dead ends, you'll eventually get there. And if you don't, well, at least you'll have seen some countryside and strange hats along the way. Your fellow pilgrims are a colorful crew. One has a bandaged foot and carries a carved walking stick that may or may not have once been a chair leg. Another wears a hat so tall and floppy it smacks him in the face every time he turns. There's a woman with a stuffed goose in her satchel, not for eating, she insists, but for luck. You decide not to question that logic. One man has already started singing, badly, loudly, about fish. You hope this is not a regular feature. Your feet begin to ache just an hour in. Not in that noble, romantic way the saints always seem to manage, but in the very real, my toes are turning into raisins kind of way. Blisters are forming quietly under your soles, like soft little regrets. Your right boot squeaks with every step. You pretend not to notice, though everyone else definitely does. You pass a crumbling shrine under a leaning oak, its icon worn smooth by the weather and countless hopeful hands. Someone's left a small pastry on the stone, a token of thanks, or maybe a snack they dropped and didn't want to admit it. You say a quick prayer anyway, can't hurt. By midday, your group has slowed to a lopsided shuffle. The sun is high, the road is warm, and the flies have found you. You swat absently at one that keeps circling your ear like it's trying to confess a secret. The man with the fish song is now humming something suspiciously close to a hymn, or a drinking tune. You're too tired to decide which. A cart passes you going the other way, pulled by a mule that looks mildly insulted to be alive. The driver nods and warns you of a broken bridge up ahead. His teeth are very optional. You thank him and pretend to understand what he meant when he said, "The hill groans like a bishop after vespers." You file that away under curious phrases that might be helpful later. As the sun dips again, the air grows cooler and the birds quieter. Your legs feel like overcooked noodles. One pilgrim suggests setting up camp near an old milestone that may or may not say 22 miles to somewhere. You lay down in the grass beside a lopsided sack of lentils and try to remember why you started this in the first place. For penance? For healing? For adventure? For a change of scenery? You're not sure anymore. You just know the stars are coming out, the moon is suspiciously bright, and the road stretches on tomorrow. You close your eyes and drift off to the soft murmurs of your fellow travelers. The occasional clank of a pot lid, and a snore that could register on the Richter scale. You'll walk farther tomorrow. For now, you rest, you're a pilgrim, and you've only just begun. Morning mist curls low around your ankles as you stretch out the stiffness from your limbs and rise from your nest of scratchy wool and flattened grass. Somewhere nearby, someone sneezes violently. Someone else is already singing again. You hope it's not about fish. The sky is a soft gray bruise, and you can't tell if it's going to rain or just tease you all day. You poke at your boots with mild suspicion. They're still damp. So is your left elbow, inexplicably. As your little group gathers its things, a new worry creeps in. Which way is east? You stand in the middle of a dirt fork that might have once been a clear road, but now looks more like a pair of wandering goat trails. One vanishes into a thicket of trees, the other skirts around a distant pasture, where something is either a sheep or a very bored man in a wool hat. Nobody has a compass. Someone suggests following the sun, but the sun is still hiding behind a cloud shaped like a sleeping duck. Another person unfolds a parchment from their pack, and there it is, your first real encounter with medieval cartography. To call it a map is generous. It's more like a devotional doodle. There are rivers that run uphill, mountains shaped like fish, and what appears to be a dragon sipping tea in the margin. The town you're supposed to reach today is marked with a church symbol and surrounded by mysterious blobs labeled "Here Be Miracles" and "Pig Swamp." Everyone squints. No one understands it. Someone turns it upside down and squints harder. A third person insists that if you just pray hard enough, the way will be revealed. You nod encouragingly and quietly plan to follow whichever footpath smells less like manure. The map gets passed around like sacred scripture, but it doesn't help anyone feel less lost. You walk anyway. Forward seems like a safe bet. Hours pass. The trees grow thicker, the path narrower. You start to suspect the forest is playing tricks on you. Every bend feels familiar. Every squirrel looks like it's judging you. A moss-covered log reappears for the third time. You try to convince yourself it's a different log. The woman with the goose charm insists the goose is pulling to the left. And maybe that's divine guidance, or maybe she's just been eating mushrooms again. A lone signpost finally appears at a crossroads, and you rush to it like it's the answer to all your troubles. But the wood is so weathered that the words are barely visible. One arm points to something like Thybern Burn, another to Saint Wildflim's Tooth. A third one dangles, pointing straight into a thicket. You all stand there in silent despair. Eventually, a passing plowman appears, wearing the expression of someone deeply uninterested in your troubles. He's got mud on his knees and a cabbage under one arm. Which way to... the shrine? Someone ventures. He eyes you, shrugs, and says, "Keep on past the leaning elm till the road forgets itself. Then turn where the wind hums like a widow's breath." There is a long pause. "Right," someone says. "Excellent." You walk on. You do not see an elm. You hear no wind. The road has most certainly forgotten itself. You begin to realize how little the concept of standardized direction existed. To you, north means up, or toward the top of a map. But in the Middle Ages, people didn't orient themselves that way. Directions were emotional, spiritual. You didn't go north. You went toward the relic, or away from the witch's field, or where my uncle once saw a glowing cow. Distances were told in prayer lengths, or in the time it took to wear out a pair of sandals. There's a kind of poetry in it, and a kind of madness. You pass a stone marker carved with a fish and a badly drawn moon. You're not sure if it's a wayfinder or graffiti. The man with the singing habit says it's a sign you're close to holiness. You think it's a sign you need a nap. The road opens again into rolling fields, and for a moment the sun breaks through, warm and forgiving. Birds trill. Someone offers you a bit of cheese. It's soft, strange, and smells like justice. You eat it anyway. And then, as you crest the next hill, you spot it. A distant village, clustered like mushrooms around a squat bell tower. Cheers erupt, feet quicken. Someone starts humming again. This time, something vaguely triumphant. You descend with renewed energy, your aches momentarily forgotten. The path becomes cobbled, uneven, but promising. The village is right there, only it's not your village. It's not the one on the map. It's not even on the map. You've walked in a wide, cheerful, cheese-fueled circle. There is collective silence. Then someone quietly suggests that maybe this was meant to happen, that the saints work in mysterious loops, that getting lost is a spiritual state. You nod. That sounds like something a medieval monk would say to avoid admitting he has no idea where you are. You decide to rest a while before retracing your steps, or maybe choosing a new direction entirely. A friendly-looking goat keeps trying to eat your sleeve. You let it. You've surrendered to the way of the road. And anyway, as one of the elders of the group says over a bowl of lentil stew from a kind villager, no one ever really arrives where they think they're going. But if you keep moving, eventually the road starts to believe in you. You smile, unsure whether that's wisdom or fatigue talking. But you like how it sounds. The moon will rise soon, and with it, the old fears. But for now, in the lull between waypoints, you let your body soften into the moment. You're still lost. But it's a lovely place to be lost in. You wake to the smell of onions, not the soft, caramelized kind that drift in from a warm kitchen window. No, this is the sharp, raw, nose-puckering kind that clings to fingers and hangs in the morning air like a warning somewhere nearby. Someone's been gnawing on one for breakfast, or bathing with one, or both. You can't be sure. You roll over and immediately regret it as your spine reminds you it slept on a root. Again. The road is calling. But it's not singing. It's stewing. You begin the day with your feet already tired, your belt a little tighter from the lentil stew last night, and your sense of direction still as wobbly as ever. The village behind you fades into morning mist. You cross a narrow bridge that creaks under your weight and smells distinctly of wet sheep. Your boots squelch in mud, and the air carries the curious blend of fresh dew, animal musk, and distant firewood smoke. Every step is its own whiff of medieval reality. As you trudge forward, the scent of wood smoke gives way to the tang of tanned leather. A pair of cobblers have set up shop under a grove of chestnut trees, hammering away at sandals and straps while trading jokes too crude to repeat. One offers to resole your left boot for a few coins and a blessing from Saint Bartholomew. You're not sure he has the license to issue such things, but you nod anyway. Soon the trees thin, and the road hugs a ditch filled with murky water and what might have once been a goat. You breathe through your mouth, but that just adds flavor. There's something oddly comforting about the sheer variety of smells here. A chaotic bouquet of honest living. Hay and sweat, ale and garlic, dung and dandelions. You pass a small farm where a woman is throwing peels into a pigsty. The pigs are overjoyed. They squeal with gusto and dance in place like oddly shaped toddlers. The wind shifts, and suddenly you are enveloped in a cloud of pig enthusiasm. You gag, just a little, but you keep walking. You're a pilgrim. You've faced worse. You take a detour down a side path where a traveling merchant has set up an impromptu stall. He's selling dried fish, brittle herbs, a comb with only 3 teeth left, and something he claims is scented oil for divine favor. You unstopper the vial and recoil. It smells like if hope had a hangover. You thank him politely and move on. Your companions are in various states of nasal despair. One has wrapped a kerchief around her face, claiming it's for holy protection. Another insists the worse it smells, the holier the road must be. Saint Gertrude's path was paved with dung, he says, like it's a known fact. Historians still argue whether that particular detail was literal or just a metaphor for moral struggle. Around midday, the wind shifts again, and a new scent drifts in, this time warm and inviting. You pause, everyone pauses, bread, freshly baked, yeasty, golden brown bread. You follow your nose like a hound through a patch of low brush and come upon a small wayside oven, puffing smoke into the sky. A pair of nuns in soot-smeared habits are hauling loaves from the fire, stacking them into baskets. You approach reverently, as one might approach a relic. One of the nuns gives you a lopsided smile and a small, still warm roll. It smells like home, like comfort, like forgiveness with a crust. You eat in silence, eyes closed. Nothing else exists for a moment. Then the wind changes again. You catch the sulfur sting of a nearby tanner's pit, where animal hides soak in vats of urine and lime. It sneaks up on you, that smell. One second you're in a warm bread haze. The next you're smacked in the face with the ghost of 20 angry goats. Your eyes water. You pick up the pace. A mile later, the group passes through a hamlet where someone's boiling cabbage. You know this not because you see the pot, but because the scent has already ambushed you half a mile out. It clings to your hair. It coats your tongue. A child runs by with a turnip on a stick and waves. You wave back, trying not to inhale. And just when you think your nose has endured every possible medieval affront, you cross a field where the local lord has chosen today to fertilize. The smell is so potent, it feels like it has texture. You breathe through your sleeves. You march in determined silence, heads bowed like penitents walking through invisible fire. Eventually, the fields end and you return to the cover of trees. The smells shift again. Pine sap, damp leaves, the faint trace of wild mint crushed underfoot. It's the cleanest air you've breathed all day, and you savor it. Someone sneezes behind you, breaking the spell. You pause at a stream to splash your face and rinse the sweat from your neck. The water is cool and carries the faint scent of moss. You fill your water skin and sit for a moment beneath an elm tree, thankful for a break in the olfactory barrage. As you rest, you notice something peculiar, a pile of herbs bundled and tied to a nearby branch. Lavender, rosemary, and something else sharp and unfamiliar. A charm, perhaps, or a marker left by another pilgrim. You lean closer and inhale. It's surprisingly pleasant, and for a fleeting second, it almost drowns out the pigsty memories. The woman with the goose claims it's a sign that you're being watched over. The singing man declares it smells like destiny. You think it smells like someone finally cared about noses. You walk on, carrying the day's scents like invisible souvenirs. You realize the road speaks in smells more than words. Each village, each bend, each field has its own note in the great medieval melody. And whether sweet or sour, it reminds you, you're alive and you're moving. As evening approaches, the scent of smoke returns, this time from your own fire, kindled under an open sky. You warm your hands beside it, your tunic still faintly perfumed with everything you passed through today. Someone is toasting a hunk of onion on a stick. Of course. You smile despite yourself. The smells of the road are part of the story now. Not always pleasant, never forgettable, and somehow oddly comforting. The next morning greets you with the soft squelch of damp wool against damp skin. Somewhere during the night, a light rain passed through the camp, just enough to soak everything and dry nothing. You wriggle ungracefully from your blanket and wince at the sensation of linen clinging to your thighs like a needy barn cat. There's a patch of fog hanging low across the path ahead, giving everything a blurred, dreamlike softness. It would be peaceful, even poetic, if your tunic didn't currently feel like it had been fashioned from soggy bread. You stand slowly, brushing off a snail that seems to have mistaken your sleeve for real estate. Your companions are already stirring, yawning, scratching, and muttering half-prayers into the mist. The woman with the goose is trying to fasten a buckle on her cloak with a spoon. The man with the singing habit has lost a sandal again. As you pack up your things, you begin to realize just how poorly designed your clothing is for a long journey. Your tunic, hand-stitched, blessed, and entirely too coarse, chafes at the neck and underarms. The belt you thought looked dignified when you left home is now a persistent reminder that your waistline has opinions. And your boots. Dear heavens. Your boots. Somewhere between yesterday's pig field and the cabbage haze. They have molded into something that resembles both swamp and punishment. The scallop badge on your chest, the symbol of the pilgrim, meant to signal your holiness and good intentions, has somehow vanished. You retrace a few steps to a patch of grass where it's lying face down in a puddle, looking deeply unimpressed with your progress. You pin it back on with a bit of twine and a muttered apology. Fashion, you remind yourself, was never the point. But still, it would be nice if your sleeves weren't soaking up every dewdrop between here and the next shrine. You try rolling them up, only to discover that the seams are more decorative than functional. They unroll the moment you move. One of your companions, a wiry man with too many opinions about saints, has tied his cloak into a sort of makeshift kilt, declaring that breezes are blessings. Another has turned her headscarf into what looks suspiciously like a slingshot. You begin to suspect that medieval fashion, when tested on the road, becomes an exercise in invention or surrender. You walk with the sun low behind you, casting long shadows that seem more graceful than you feel. The path is rocky, and the hem of your tunic keeps catching on brambles. Each tug feels like the forest itself is trying to disrobe you in protest. You wonder if pilgrims in paintings ever had to deal with this. They always look so serene, halos glowing, clothes spotless, expressions calm. You, on the other hand, currently resemble a disgruntled laundry line. As the day warms, the layers become unbearable. Cloaks are shed, tunics are hitched up. The man with too much energy ties his into a short robe and struts like a monk-turned messenger. The rest of you try not to look. You pass a small stream, and several pilgrims immediately gather to rinse out their garments. Shirts are wrung, socks are slapped against stones, and underthings are flung across bushes to dry in the sun. For a brief, fluttering moment, the hedgerow looks like a procession of linen ghosts. A child passing by with her grandmother points at the floating socks and giggles. And then, the inevitable happens. Someone steps into the stream too boldly and lands flat on their back with a spectacular splash. Cheers erupt, laughter follows. Even you can't help but smile. The fallen pilgrim sits up, dripping and grinning, arms raised in triumph. The goose honks approvingly. Once everyone's dignity is reassembled, you continue on. Clothes now, at least partially dry and entirely wrinkled in new, unexpected directions. Around midday, you approach a market town, not your destination, but a welcome detour. You're immediately surrounded by the cacophony of traders, animals, and smells, both familiar and foreign. A cloth merchant calls out, waving a bolt of fabric dyed the color of old beets. Another offers pilgrim-ready tunics, guaranteed to resist sweat and sin. You doubt both claims. You pause at a stall selling sandals made of bark and envy their breathability. Your own boots, by now, feel like brined leather traps. The vendor eyes your feet and offers a sympathetic grunt. First journey, he asks. You nod. He taps the scallop badge on your chest and says, "That one's upside down." You blink, look down, and sure enough, your badge is frowning at the ground. Of course it is. A young woman nearby is selling woven belts with patterns of tiny pilgrims stitched along the length. You can't resist. It's absurdly garish, but also cheerful. You trade a few coins and strap it on immediately. It rides too high on your waist, and the design makes it look like a row of ants are marching toward your stomach. But somehow, it brings a flicker of joy. By afternoon, you've rejoined the road with a fresh resolve. and a slightly ridiculous belt. Your tunic is finally drying in the heat, and your boots have softened just enough to be tolerable. You pass a mirror-like puddle and catch your reflection. Sunburnt, wrinkled, somewhat bent, but unmistakably a pilgrim. Later, while stopping to rest under an elm tree, someone pulls out a scrap of parchment. On it is a rough sketch of a saint, barefoot and glowing, walking the path with nothing but a staff and a smile. No mention of blisters, you mutter, but even so, you know the truth. No one looks holy mid-journey. The pilgrim you become is not the one who sets out, neatly pressed, well-fed, badge upright, but the one who limps, who laughs, who endures rain and ridicule with equal grace. As dusk approaches, the temperature drops again. You pull your cloak close, grateful for its scratchy warmth, and nestle into the earth for another night. A moth lands on your sleeve and stays. For once, your clothes aren't rejecting you. They're becoming a part of you, thread by dusty thread. Tomorrow, you'll walk again. And tomorrow, your left boot will probably start squeaking. But tonight, you rest, a little wiser, a little dirtier, and unmistakably on your way. The night begins quietly enough. You've walked far, eaten little, and your limbs have begun to hum with the sort of dull, background ache that only comes from hours of steady movement. The grass beneath you is mercifully dry this time, and your cloak, though still carrying the faint aroma of sheep, has warmed to your body. A breeze rustles the canopy above like a gentle shushing. Then comes the sound, a snore, loud, guttural, and entirely without shame, tears through the stillness like a saw through wet wood. You crack open one eye. The source lies a few feet away, a burly man curled around a bag of parsnips, his mouth agape, producing a new brand of thunder with each exhale. With every snort, a moth flutters skyward. You briefly consider relocating, but the effort feels immense. So you sigh, adjust your hood, and try to drift again. Sleeping as a medieval pilgrim is not a solitary affair. Privacy is an unfamiliar luxury. You're never really alone. Even now, in this small clearing off the roadside, at least a dozen bodies lie in scattered heaps. Travelers turned lumpy bundles of wool, leather, and dreams. One woman talks in her sleep. A boy nearby clicks his tongue as if mimicking a horse. Somewhere, someone's whispering a prayer. Somewhere else, someone is clearly passing gas and pretending not to. And then there are the chickens. You don't remember there being chickens, but there they are, pecking noisily near your bag, one hopping on a rock as if giving a sermon. You blink at them, and one blinks back, entirely unbothered. You make peace with the fact that poultry will be part of your evening. A flickering torch glows in the distance, likely from the edge of a nearby hamlet. Crickets sing their brittle lullabies, and the occasional clatter of hooves drifts in from the road. You're reminded again that rest, like so much else on this journey, must be earned and then negotiated. At some point during the night, the fire dwindles to embers. The air cools, cloaks shift, feet creep closer together in search of warmth. Without formal beds or walls, the body becomes both mattress and insulation. Strangers huddled not out of comfort, but necessity. You feel someone's elbow nudge your back. Another rolls over, murmuring something about a lost spoon. There is no etiquette for this, no rules, only an unspoken agreement. We are all tired, we are all here, and we'll pretend we don't hear your stomach growling if you pretend you didn't just elbow my nose. You shift again, trying to find a patch of ground without roots, rocks, or roosters. It's a losing battle. You close your eyes and try to let the soundscape lull you. The shuffles, the wheezes, the gentle sighs of a dozen lives temporarily aligned by shared hardship, and a vague sense of destination. And then someone starts humming. It's not loud. In fact, it's strangely soft, almost melodic. A low tune, perhaps a hymn, or a nursery song remembered from childhood. It drifts over the group like incense, and for a moment, all movement stills. Even the chickens freeze. You can't help but smile. It's ridiculous, and yet oddly comforting. You think of home, of the small room you left behind, of your mother's soup, your father's sandals by the door, your sister's incessant tapping of fingers against the table during grace. You wonder if they think of you tonight, if they're praying for you, worrying, or simply grateful for the extra space at dinner. The stars peek through the treetops now, scattered and sharp. The moon is brighter than you'd like, casting silhouettes of your strange little community on the grass. It makes everything feel softer, somehow, like you've wandered into a painting, one where brushstrokes smudge the details into poetry. Beside you, a woman is curled around a cloth bundle that, upon closer inspection, appears to be bread. A man in a patched tunic clutches a wooden carving of a saint. Another has removed his boots and tucked them under his head like a pillow. A risky gamble depending on the boot. A small dog wanders through, tail wagging, inspecting faces before curling beside the humming pilgrim. You marvel at how quickly strangers become companions when sleep is involved. There's something about shared vulnerability. No walls, no roles, just breath and body and the long, aching quiet between villages that binds people together faster than conversation ever could. Even the smells, as persistent as they are, become familiar. Someone reeks of fish, another of rosemary and fatigue. Your own scent is an evolving mystery of smoke, wool, and regret. No one comments, no one judges. It's as though the road has scrubbed away your outer layers, quite literally, in some cases, and left only the bones of your being. As the hours stretch thin, the sounds fade, snoring softens, the restless settle. Even the chickens, somehow, roost themselves quietly near a stump. The forest holds its breath. You lie still, not quite asleep, not fully awake. A strange halfway place where thoughts drift like fog, where the ache in your knees mingles with the warmth of bodies nearby, and where even the ridiculousness of the day, the tunic mishaps, the bread belt, the fish-scented man, begins to feel like part of a larger rhythm, a strange lullaby of humanity, stumbling together towards something sacred. At some point, you must drift off, because when you open your eyes again, the sky has changed. The moon is lower now, glowing like a watchful eye. A rooster crows, naturally, and you're grateful for the sound. It means you made it through another night, wrapped in wool, nestled between two near strangers and a disinterested chicken. You stretch your arms, wince at a cramp in your hip, and feel the dew already soaking through the edge of your cloak. Around you, others are stirring, blinking, yawning, scratching. A man sneezes. Someone mutters that their bread pillow is now soggy. You smile, sit up, and brush a feather from your sleeve. Another day awaits. Another stretch of road, more hills, more blisters, more holy uncertainty. But for now, there is comfort in the absurd closeness of it all, in sleeping beside strangers and waking to find they've become something gentler than strangers. Fellow pilgrims, fellow fools, fellow dreamers. You pull on your boots, still damp, and prepare to walk again. You've barely left the clearing when the road begins to change again, not in direction, but in energy. There's something in the air now, something charged. Your fellow pilgrims seem to notice it too. They walk with slightly straighter backs, tuck in tunics, and try, with mixed success, to wipe the road dust from their cheeks. A few even rehearse their stories aloud, as if preparing to meet someone important. You're not quite sure what's happening, but then you see the sign. Blessed relics ahead, donations encouraged. You've entered shrine territory. The dirt path swells into a bustling roadside knot of tents, stalls, and wooden signs with badly painted saints. The sudden shift from solitude to spiritual commerce is jarring. Just yesterday, you were wresting a damp sock from a bramble. Today, someone in a crimson robe is trying to sell you miracle bark from the staff of St. Martin. It smells suspiciously like driftwood. Everywhere, there are cries for attention. Blessed bones, only 2 coins for a peek. Come cleanse your sins with genuine holy fog, bottled this morning. Pilgrim water, 1 sip brings visions, 2 may cause dizziness. You dodge a man thrusting a withered root at your face. claiming it cured his cousin's gout and his goat's shyness. Another offers a cloth that once wiped the brow of a weeping nun. You're not entirely sure that's a brag. The cloth is damp, very damp. The woman with the goose seems fascinated. She exchanges a crust of bread for a thimble of angel tears and spends the next half hour declaring how refreshed her soul feels, even as her stomach begins to growl. The goose, notably, looks unimpressed. You pass a stand advertising portable blessings. Small, crudely carved wooden saints with exaggerated eyebrows and removable halos. The seller demonstrates one that jingles when shaken. "For extra intercession," he whispers, eyes wide. You nod politely and retreat before you're blessed into bankruptcy. Further down, a boy no older than 10 steps in front of you and thrusts a palm upward. "Pay the saint's toll," he says. You blink. "Which saint?" "All of them," he replies, straight-faced. "Especially the ones watching." You hand him a crumb from your pocket. He examines it solemnly, then scampers off. The crowd thickens around a raised platform where an older man in flowing robes gestures to a wooden box glowing faintly in the morning light. "Behold, the toe of Saint Ethelburga," he declares. You squint. It's wrapped in cloth, sealed with wax, and placed atop a velvet cushion. People line up to drop coins into a bowl and lean in reverently. You join the queue, curiosity outweighing your skepticism. When it's your turn, you peer down at what might be a toenail, or perhaps a shard of horn. You murmur a polite prayer, cross yourself, and step away. As you move back into the crowd, someone whispers that Saint Ethelburga was known for walking barefoot across thorns. Others claim she could levitate. Still others argue she never existed at all. Historians still debate whether the relics of Ethelburga were ever real, or if the shrine keepers simply found a sheep's knuckle and blessed it out of optimism. You wander away from the platform, mind spinning. The energy in this place is strange, both reverent and opportunistic. There's genuine faith here, no doubt, but it's woven tightly with performance. Pilgrims weep and vendors smile. Prayers are whispered next to price tags. A man lights a candle for his late wife while arguing with a monk over the cost of wax. At the edge of the shrine area, you spot a quiet alcove beneath a willow tree. A small shrine sits there, barely a stool high, with a simple wooden cross and a pile of wildflowers. No one mans it, no one sells anything. There is only silence. You kneel briefly, not quite sure what you're praying for. Maybe guidance, maybe grace, maybe just a moment to breathe. When you rise, you find a note wedged between 2 stones at the base. It reads, "May your path be crooked and your faith be patient." It's unsigned. You slip it into your bag without thinking. Back in the fray, the singing man is now negotiating with someone over a sack of holy sand. He says it smells like raisins. The seller insists it cures envy. You wonder, idly, whether it's both. You pass a stand offering indulgences, small slips of parchment promising forgiveness in exchange for coin. The monk selling them is young, red-faced, and very nervous. He avoids eye contact as he hands over the script. You wonder if he believes in what he's doing, or if he's just trying to buy boots that don't leak. You begin to notice the looks exchanged behind some stalls. Not quite winks, but close. There's a kind of rhythm to it all. Pilgrims handing over coins, relics glowing just right in the sunlight, testimonies shouted at just the right pitch. It's like theater, performed in the name of salvation. You don't feel cheated, not exactly, but you do feel watched. As the sun starts to dip, casting long golden rays across the shrine square, the crowds begin to thin. Pilgrims gather their things. Vendors pack away their wares. One man mutters something about recharging the relics. You pretend not to hear. You sit at the edge of a fountain carved in the shape of a lamb. The water trickles gently, and for a moment, the din recedes. You reach into your pack and pull out the bread you'd saved. It's gone slightly hard, but still edible. You chew slowly, watching a moth land on the fountain's edge, its wings catching the last light of day. Behind you, a man with ink-stained fingers sketches the scene. Shrines, pilgrims, sellers, all blending into a soft swirl. He doesn't speak, just draws. Eyes narrowed, lips pursed. You wonder how he'll capture the smell of incense mixed with fried onions, or the way your scallop badge caught the sun at just the right moment to feel meaningful. Eventually, the sketcher rises, tips his cap, and walks on. You do too. The shrine fades behind you like a dream, part devotion, part spectacle, part traveling miracle. You leave with nothing new in your pack but a note and a few lingering scents. And maybe, just maybe, something like faith. Not loud, not performative, just quiet and steady, like footsteps on a dusty road. You've barely walked an hour past the last shrine before the air begins to shift again, not in scent, but in tone. The road narrows into a soft dirt path flanked by old willows, and the sun flickers through the leaves in dappled light. Your group is smaller now. Some pilgrims chose to linger at the shrine longer, others peeled off toward their own routes. But those who remain seem lighter somehow, less burdened by blisters and more open to conversation. And conversation is exactly what begins to bubble up. It starts with the goose woman, as usual. She leans in and says, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Did you hear about the man last week who turned into a tree after refusing to pray at St. Giles's crossroad? You blink. Into a tree?" She nods gravely. An elm, apparently, grew bark overnight. You murmur something non-committal. The singing man, close behind you, snorts loudly and launches into a competing tale about a woman who was once cursed to walk backward for 7 years after mocking a relic that turned out to be authentic. You're not sure how that works anatomically, but no one interrupts him. Soon, the stories spill like a knocked-over wine flask. A boy claims to have seen a rooster lay an egg that hatched into a snake. A woman swears she met a monk who glowed faintly in the dark and attracted moths wherever he went. Another insists she passed a pilgrim once who didn't leave footprints, and the entire group fell silent whenever she walked. You listen, amused, skeptical, and strangely comforted. The road, it seems, is more than just a path for feet. It's a place where stories breed, weird, wild, and wonderfully unverified. There's something timeless about it. These stories, shared in low tones under open sky, are as much part of the journey as the stones under your boots. In fact, they help pass the miles better than any saint's relic or goose-guided shortcut. One older man, hunched with age and cloaked in silence until now, speaks up without turning his head. "My uncle once met a man who could smell lies, said they stank like old cabbage." The group chuckles, but you glance at him. His face gives nothing away. Then someone brings up the moon. You're not sure how it starts, maybe a glance skyward, or the quiet hush that descends as you pass a crumbling roadside chapel. But suddenly the conversation veers from gossip to the celestial. "The moon's been watching us," says a woman with silver rings tied to her sleeves. "Ever since we left the last hilltop, I've felt it behind my ear." Someone else nods. "They say if you stare at it too long while on pilgrimage, it starts whispering secrets into your dreams." A third voice, tired but serious, adds, "That's why we got lost last night. The moon twisted the paths. Doesn't like us walking when it's full." There's a pause. Then a shrug from the boy who'd talked about the snake egg. Or maybe we just missed the fork. But the idea lingers. The moon, round and pale and far too clever for comfort, now seems to hover more deliberately in the sky. It watches, or at least, it's fun to pretend it does. You recall, vaguely, tales of lunacy, how those who traveled under its full gaze were thought to be more prone to accidents, to madness, to confession. Historians still argue whether medieval pilgrims truly believed the moon had agency, or if they just needed something to blame when things went sideways. Still, the timing is hard to ignore. 2 nights ago, you wandered into that thicket that circled back on itself 3 times. Last night, the stars disappeared completely behind low cloud. And tonight, the moon is rising again, and the path ahead looks just a little too clean, too smooth, as if swept by unseen hands. Someone clutches their scallop badge. Another mutters a prayer. The stories are just stories. You remind yourself. But you tighten your cloak all the same. By early evening, you come upon a wide clearing, perfect for resting. Someone lights a fire, someone else boils something that smells like celery and socks. You sit in a circle, cloaks drawn close, and the storytelling continues. It softens in tone now, less strange, more reflective. Tales of home, of missed family, of why each person started this walk in the first place. A man tells of his brother, who died last winter and whose favorite song was sung by the wind. A young girl shares how she dreamed of the Virgin Mary once, who told her to walk until she found a feather in the shape of a smile. She holds one now, pressed in cloth, shaped exactly like, well, a feather. You tell a story too, a quiet one, about your sister's wedding and the way your father cried behind a tree so no one would see. The group listens. No one laughs. Someone offers you the last bit of lentil cake, and you accept it with quiet gratitude. The stars appear one by one, like shy guests at a feast. The moon, of course, returns, smug, perhaps, or simply indifferent. You stare at it for a long moment. It does not blink. Later, when the fire crackles low and your eyes begin to blur with sleep, you hear one last story, a whispered tale, passed from pilgrim to pilgrim like contraband. There's a saint, says the voice, who never existed, made up by pilgrims, they say, but the stories got so good, so consistent, so shared, that people began to pray to her anyway. They say she answers too, especially if the moon's watching. You don't ask for a name. Some stories are better unnamed. Some prayers are better made without words. You lie back on the grass, arms folded under your head, eyes open to the night sky. Around you, snores begin, a giggle here, a murmur there. The fire hisses softly, and the stars lean closer. You feel the road in your bones now, not just the distance, but the rhythm, the soft exchange of tales, of fears, of ridiculous encounters with chatty monks and glowing sheep. These stories, however wild, bind you to the others. You may forget their faces, their names, their goose-related rituals, but the stories will stay. And in some far-off winter, when you smell garlic and wet wool on the wind, you'll remember the moon. You'll remember the man who glowed. You'll remember how laughter and faith shared the same seat at the fire. You close your eyes and let the stories settle. Tomorrow will be strange again, but tonight you are safe in the company of fools and saints alike. The next morning greets you with an eerie silence, not the peaceful kind, like bird song before dawn or the hush before a prayer. This silence feels thick, heavy. It wraps around your group like a damp wool blanket pulled too tightly. The trees are taller here, straighter, darker. Their branches form long, crooked fingers above your head. Sunlight barely filters through, reduced to ghostly streaks of pale gold. And then there's the fog. It crept in sometime before dawn, curling between trunks and clinging to boots. Now, it floats ankle-high and rising, not a rolling mist, but a creeping one. The sort that muffles footsteps and makes every turn of the path look like the last. It doesn't smell foul exactly, just wet, like moss, old stone, and forgotten things. The goose honks nervously. You tighten your pack, check your scallop badge, still miraculously pinned upright, and move on. The forest path is uneven and barely marked. Stones jut up like jagged teeth. Roots twist across the trail, like they've forgotten how to stay underground. Your feet catch more than once, but you don't fall. Not yet. Behind you. The group is unusually quiet. There's no singing, no gossip, no fish-based proverbs. Even the man who usually mutters while counting his toes has gone still. You can hear only breathing, yours, theirs, the trees, a hush like a held breath. You round a bend and find a fork in the trail. It's not marked, of course. One path curls down into a hollow shaded by dense thickets. The other winds uphill, its edges swallowed by fog. You wait for someone to decide, but everyone lingers just behind you. You point uphill. Higher ground, you offer, might help us see. No one argues, but they don't seem thrilled either. You start up the slope. The incline is subtle at first, then steeper. Your breath grows heavier. Dew clings to your lashes. The fog thickens, wrapping itself around your ankles, then knees. It's like walking through a dream you can't wake from. Someone coughs, another stumbles. The path narrows, then seems to disappear entirely. Are we sure this is still the way? Someone asks, voice barely above a whisper. You want to be sure, but you're not. The trees look the same in every direction. Tall, moss-covered, silent. A crow caws once, far off, then nothing. You pause to catch your breath beside a tree with bark that peels in curly ribbons. There are carvings on the trunk, symbols, maybe letters, weathered beyond recognition. You reach out to trace one with your finger, but the bark flakes away at your touch. Behind you, the others shuffle in place. The goose pecks at a root. The fog presses closer. You suggest going a little farther. Maybe the mist will thin. Maybe the path will reappear. Maybe there's a clearing ahead. Your words sound reasonable, hopeful even. No one questions them. But you notice the way they all start walking just a little closer now, shoulders brushing, hands sometimes touching by accident. You reach what might be a crossroads, or just a wide patch where the forest swallowed the trail entirely. The ground flattens. Everything looks the same. The fog is now at waist height. You can't see your feet. Someone calls out. Does anyone know a prayer for not getting eaten by trees? It's meant as a joke, a bad one, but no one laughs. You all stand there for a while, listening, waiting, hoping the trees might shift, that the fog might part, that a miracle might choose now to announce itself with bells and breadcrumbs. But there's nothing. Then someone points to the left. I think I see a marker. You turn, squint. Through the mist, barely visible, is a lump of stone, too angular to be natural. You move toward it, carefully. Each step feels like a risk. The fog swirls but doesn't part. When you reach it, you find a stump. Not a marker. Not a shrine, just a broken stump with moss growing on one side and nothing to say for itself. You sigh, loudly. That's when you notice the footprints. They're faint, but visible in the mud, human, heading away from the stump, curving sharply downhill. You call the others over. There's a brief council, short, cautious, quiet. The consensus is simple. Follow the prints. Better than wandering blind, better than standing still. So you do. The prints lead downhill again. The path barely there. You follow single file now. No one speaks. The forest is still too thick, too silent. A few birds call, but distantly. The fog begins to lift, barely, until you can see your knees again, then your feet, then the edges of the path. Just when you start to believe you're escaping, the path splits again, this time into three, and the footprints vanish. You stop walking, no one speaks. Then the goose, tired of everyone's indecision, chooses the middle path and waddles forward. You all stare at it. Someone shrugs. The goose knows. You're too tired to argue, so you follow. The path narrows, dips, curves. The fog lifts more. You spot sunlight filtering in from the canopy above. And then, quite suddenly, the forest breaks. The trees part like curtains. You step out into a meadow, sloping, golden, dotted with wildflowers and ringed with old stone walls. The silence breaks. Birds chirp. Wind stirs the grass. Somewhere, far off, you hear the clink of a bell. The group breathes as one, relief, maybe, or just the return of sound. You drop your pack beside a flat stone and sit, legs trembling. The others do the same. Someone pulls out a hunk of cheese, another, a crust of bread. There's no fire, no shrine, no explanation. But the fog is gone, and for now, that's enough. You lie back in the grass, arms outstretched. The sky above is a pale, endless blue, as if nothing ever happened. The forest behind you rustles, just once. You think about the way the mist distorted everything, how the trail you trusted vanished, how even your own thoughts had started to blur. And yet, somehow, you didn't panic, you didn't turn back, you moved forward, even if blindly. And maybe that's the pilgrimage, not just the walking, but the wandering, the losing, the trusting that, eventually, one wrong turn might lead you exactly where you need to be. That night, you sleep beneath open sky. There's no forest canopy to trap the fog, no root pressing into your back, no stranger snoring beside you with questionable breath, and even more questionable boundaries. Just the cool hush of night, a sky freckled with stars, and the long, slow breath of the grass as it sways in rhythm with your thoughts. But, above all, the moon. It rises quietly, like a polite intruder, pale and round and bright enough to trace the outline of your nose when you glance toward the heavens. It doesn't blink, it doesn't hum, it simply watches, perfectly still. You pull your cloak tighter and try not to take it personally. Around you, others have already started muttering. "I told you," says the silver-ringed woman, adjusting the strings of her sleeves. "It's her. She's why we got turned around." "Who?" you ask, mostly for conversation. She gestures upward with 2 fingers, knotted and ink-stained. "The moon. Look at her. You think that light's gentle? It's trickery, reflection. She's not glowing. She's stealing. Borrowed brightness always means trouble." You glance at the moon again. "It hasn't changed." Another voice chimes in. "Last time I walked this road, we missed an entire village because the moon rose crooked. Thought we were heading west. Turned out we circled back east for 2 days." Someone groans. "And did you blame the moon for your lost chicken too?" "It vanished on a full moon," the man protests. "Feathers and all." The woman with the goose strokes its head protectively and wraps it tighter in her cloak. You sit up a little and study the group. It's not just superstition. There's genuine unease in their faces, eyes that flick upward and don't linger, fingers that tighten around charms, boots shifting restlessly in the grass. The moon, in all her quiet majesty, has become the scapegoat for everything lost, twisted, or unexplainably odd. You've walked through forests, eaten soup made from things that may not legally be called vegetables, slept beside talkers, snorers, and, once, a man who yodeled in his dreams. But never have you seen this many pilgrims united in fear, not of wolves, not of bandits, not even of blisters, but of the moon. There's something strange about it. You try to brush it off. You lie back down, breathe slowly, and tell yourself, the moon is just a rock. The night is just a night. And the worst thing waiting for you is a slightly damp patch under your hip. But your thoughts won't settle. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember hearing that story too. The one about pilgrims who strayed under a full moon, never to return. And even though you don't believe it, not really, you find yourself checking your boots in the dark, just in case. The next morning, the unease lingers. The group wakes groggy and disoriented, despite having slept on level ground with a breeze that even smelled like honesty. Packs are heavier, feet are slower, someone misplaced a staff, someone else claims their bread has gone sour overnight. A full moon curse, no doubt. You try to joke. At least the moon didn't eat the goose. The goose woman does not laugh. The path ahead is narrow and overgrown, winding through low hedgerows and across shallow streams. And somehow, despite the clear sky, despite the lack of fog, you still manage to get turned around. First, it's the fork you don't remember taking. Then, the farmhouse that looks suspiciously like one you passed 2 days ago. A painted door, a crooked tree. Deja vu curls through the group like smoke. Someone mutters, "She's doing it again?" You don't ask who. You know by now. A man stops walking altogether and jabs a finger at the sky, though the moon has already slipped into daytime hiding. She rearranges things. Roads, fences, even sheep. They don't bleat the same when she's full. You wonder how many sheep he's interviewed. Still, you can't deny the sensation, that creeping, uncanny feeling that something just doesn't add up. The trail feels stretched. The turns feel wrong. A distant bell rings, then rings again. closer, then not at all. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed the moon had control over the land, whether it bent paths, warped judgment, or whispered nonsense into the ears of good Christians. But belief and logic rarely sleep in the same bed. And right now, on this road, you're leaning heavily into the camp of those who believe. The sun climbs higher. You break for lunch beside a stone wall you're half convinced you've leaned on before. Bread is passed around, a little dry, cheese, a little harder than you'd like. The man who sings doesn't sing. Even the goose is quiet, beak resting on the woman's lap as if in mourning. You stare at the sky, where the moon no longer is, and feel vaguely betrayed. Someone suggests walking only during daylight from now on. Another says to turn their scallop badges upside down until the moon apologizes. A third declares they'll carry garlic next time, which was originally intended to repel wolves, but apparently works on celestial bodies too. You bite into your bread and say nothing. When the group resumes, the pace is slower, steps more careful, conversations quieter. You notice people checking behind themselves more often, like they expect the path to slink away while no one's looking. By dusk, you reach a crossroads marked with a small shrine, a saint in faded stone, holding a book and a lamb. No inscription, no offerings, just quiet. The group gathers in a loose circle around it. Someone lights a candle, another leaves a coin. You kneel briefly, not out of ritual, but out of respect for something you can't name. As night falls, the moon rises again, slightly less full, but still full enough. You camp beside a gnarled oak. No one says much. You listen to the wind in the grass, to the hush of evening settling like a blanket, and to the almost comical sighs from every direction as pilgrims try to find positions that won't leave them limping. Before you drift off, someone whispers a new tale about a knight who tried to slay the moon with a silver sword. He missed, of course, and the sword came back crooked. He carried it for years, blaming it for every mistake, until one day he realized it had never been the sword. It had always been the moon. You smile in the dark because some part of you understands exactly what that means. The next morning, you rise to a sky that looks innocent, too innocent. It's the kind of bright, cheerful blue that feels like an apology for everything the moon pulled overnight. You stretch slowly, your joints creaking like old hinges, and try to shake the night's unease from your shoulders. Today, the plan is simple. Find the village of Stonemouth. It's supposed to be half a day's walk from the crossroads. Supposed to be. You pass 3 locals before breakfast. A man balancing a basket of eels. A woman sweeping dust from a doorway that appears to lead into a sheep pen. And a child with a stick and a determined expression. All 3 give you directions. All 3 are different. Just follow the road till the crow flies backward, says the eel man. Turn left where the dog's been digging. The woman insists. You'll smell it before you see it, says the child, brandishing his stick like a royal scepter. You thank them all and walk away with slightly more confusion than you started with. Eventually, you settle on following the dog theory. There is, in fact, a patch of churned earth by a mossy tree, possibly dog-related, possibly just very enthusiastic squirrels. You choose the leftward path anyway. It feels like progress. As you walk, more directional wisdom is offered by passing farmers, traveling tinkers, and one particularly old woman who may have been asleep with her eyes open. The instructions range from poetic to downright unhinged. Keep the wind on your back till you taste turnip in the air. Walk where the fence leans, not toward the barn, but toward regret. Stonemouth? Walk as if you're angry with the sky, and you'll find it eventually. None of these are technically incorrect, you suppose, but they lack clarity. You try to rely on landmarks instead. The forest ends. A hill begins. A cow with one horn stares at you like it's heard this all before. The road splits and rejoins in a kind of squiggly agreement with no real logic. You pass a patch of wildflowers shaped like a question mark and briefly wonder if the earth itself is playing tricks. The group is resigned. No one complains, but there's a shared expression on most faces now, a sort of glazed-over determination. The The kind you've seen in your own eyes lately when passing reflective puddles. You're still moving, still walking, but your mind has floated several paces ahead of your feet. Around midday, a signpost appears. It is glorious. It is wooden. It has letters. It points, definitively, in 3 directions. And none of them say Stonemouth. You stare at it. So does everyone else. Crickleburn, someone says aloud, squinting. That's not it. Whittersyke? Definitely not. East Marchling? That sounds made up. The signpost spins slightly in the wind. You wonder if it's nailed down or just loosely hoping for the best. Someone offers to climb a tree for a better view. Someone else lies down in protest. The goose honks once, a short, judgmental note. Eventually, an old shepherd ambles up the hill. He carries a walking stick that looks older than the moon and wears a cloak stitched from so many patches it resembles a map of the known world. You ask him where Stonemouth is. He thinks about it, then says, "Well, depends which Stonemouth." You blink. "There's more than one?" He shrugs. "Some folks call the hamlet down yonder Little Stonemouth. Then there's Old Stonemouth past the marsh, and Big Stonemouth up the ridge. But the only big thing there is a rock shaped like a nose." You wait. "Best ask the rock," he adds, then keeps walking. You try to decide whether you feel enlightened or cursed. Still, you pick a direction toward the marsh. It sounds least promising, which usually means it's correct, or at least less crowded. As the road turns mucky and your boots begin to complain, you pass another traveler coming the opposite way. She's wrapped in bells, tiny ones, stitched into her cloak, jingling with every step. You ask her if she's just been to Stonemouth. She pauses. "Which one?" You sigh. She laughs and points behind her. "That way is a place with a well and 3 houses. Call themselves Stonemouth, but no one agrees why." She continues down the path, the bells fading into the trees. Eventually, you find the village. Or a village. A crooked sign greets you. Stonemouth. The U scratched in hastily, like someone changed their mind halfway through carving it. It's not much, a chapel, 2 goats, and a man selling onions who also appears to be the priest. You ask if this is the famous Stonemouth known for its shrine. He raises an eyebrow. "We've got a stone," he says. "Mouth-like, if you squint." You follow him to the back of the chapel where, to his credit, there is indeed a rock that vaguely resembles an open mouth. Possibly yawning, possibly screaming. Someone has left a carrot beside it. As an offering, you assume, you nod, sincerely, you kneel, you say a small prayer to no particular saint. Because you're here, and you've walked, and something about that rock, strange, unremarkable, lopsided, feels real. As if the journey, in all its twists and confusion, still delivered you somewhere worth arriving. Later, while chewing on an onion the priest insisted you take, you think about all the strange directions you've received, the invisible geese, the smell-based landmarks, the backward crows, and somehow, they all worked, eventually, sort of. You're reminded of something someone said the night before, that getting lost is part of being found, that the road doesn't need to make sense, only to move beneath your feet. And so you walk on, a little more amused, a little more trusting, and with just enough absurdity tucked into your pocket to carry you through the next misdirection. You'll ask for help again, you'll get answers, and they won't match, but somehow, you'll still get there. You leave the maybe Stonemouth with a mildly burned tongue and half an onion in your pocket. The road ahead bends west, or what you've now decided must be west, based on the position of the sun, the lean of the trees, and a hunch confirmed by a dog that refused to move until you turned that way. By late afternoon, the ache in your calves turns sharp, and the talk of a tavern begins to echo through the group like a hymn. One pilgrim says they can already smell barley. Another swears they saw a sign nailed to a tree an hour ago, though it might have been a warning about wolves. Either way, you agree it's time for warmth, for rest, for something not made from lentils. Just as the sun dips behind a hedge of distant hills, the road widens, and a structure comes into view. It's crooked and low to the ground, leaning slightly like it's listening to secrets. A sign swings overhead with an image of a barrel and what appears to be either a dancing saint or a very drunk badger. It's called the Quiet Boar. The door creaks open to the smell of wet wood, smoke, and something bubbling in a pot that's either stew or punishment. It doesn't matter. You've made it. Inside, pilgrims fill the benches in various states of collapse. Boots are off, cloaks hang from nails. A woman at the hearth sings softly to a pot. The man behind the counter has one eye, one eyebrow, and two large hands that seem to be in permanent negotiation with the tankards he's filling. You find a seat at a long table, squeezing between a novice monk and a traveler, chewing on something too chewy to be identified. The monk smiles and raises his cup. "You smell like the road," he says. You raise yours. "So do you." A pitcher arrives. It smells faintly of apples, stronger of regret. You drink anyway. It is, in a word, effective. The table comes alive around you, voices rising, laughter following. Someone slams a palm down and insists the king once passed through this very tavern, disguised as a stonemason. Someone else claims the stew once won a medal at a holy cook-off. Neither story seems likely, but no one bothers to fact-check. The monk tells a tale about a town where the river runs backward every full moon. The fish, he says, are always late. The goosewoman shares a rumor about a relic found in a cabbage, then lost again when the cabbage was eaten. The singing man, naturally, begins humming. It's the kind of night that belongs in a story, a temporary kingdom made of bread crusts, flickering light, and shared warmth. You lean back and feel the weariness slide down your spine like melting wax. The bench creaks, the hearth pops. Outside, wind taps lightly at the shutters, as if asking to come in. You overhear a conversation behind you, two older pilgrims, whispering over their drinks. "Did you see the woman in the green cloak?" one says. "The one with the cat tattoo? She's not walking for a shrine. She's looking for someone." "Who?" "She won't say, but she carries a map. Not one like ours. Detailed, inked, expensive, like a noble's chart." You glance around the tavern. Sure enough, in the corner, there's a woman alone, sipping slowly. Her cloak is indeed green. A small, embroidered cat peeks out at her shoulder. You don't stare. You've learned the road is full of people walking toward things they can't name. Someone refills your cup. You raise it to your lips, then stop when you notice the drawing scratched into the table. A tiny figure walking with a crooked staff, a crescent moon above its head. Beneath it, in uneven letters, "We get lost to remember." You smile and take a sip. The monk beside you is now telling a story that seems to involve a saint, a goose, and a misfired arrow. His words blur slightly. Your head feels like it's wrapped in wool. The heat from the hearth seeps into your bones. A girl with braided hair plays a soft tune on a reed flute. It sounds like a lullaby and a warning, all at once. You close your eyes for just a moment. When you open them again, the tavern is dimmer, the fire lower. Someone snores near the hearth. The bar is empty but for the keeper wiping down mugs that seem older than most buildings you've slept in. He glances at you once, then nods toward a bundle of hay in the corner. You drag yourself there, nestling between your pack and the goose, who has decided your blanket is also hers. You don't argue. The warmth of the place lingers like a blessing. Sleep arrives slowly, not all at once, but in pieces. You think about the stories you heard, the ones you told, the ones you might have dreamed. You think about the monk, the cat, the walking moon. And just before sleep claims you fully, you hear one last voice, soft, slurred, sincere. Maybe the truth lives in places like this. It says, where no one cares if it's true. You smile into your cloak, because maybe that's what pilgrim truth is. Not facts, but warmth. Not certainty, but sharing. Not reaching the shrine, but resting somewhere long enough to feel human again. And for tonight, this crooked little inn is enough. Morning at the Quiet Boar arrives with the gentle chaos of boots being found, cloaks being uncrumpled, and at least one person realizing they had, at some point in the night, mistaken a bundle of onions for a pillow. You sit up slowly, head a bit foggy, mouth dry as sanded leather. Someone has taken it upon themselves to hum a hymn much too early and much too enthusiastically. You spot the monk from last night by the hearth, still smiling, still humming. He looks perfectly rested, not a crease in his robes, not a drop of wine on his sleeves. You, meanwhile, are wearing one sock and a mysterious leaf. You don't ask questions. You just rewrap your foot and sip from a mug of something vaguely tea-like that someone passes your way. As the group gathers outside under a sleepy sky, the monk falls in step beside you. "Mind if I walk with you for a bit?" he asks, cheerful as sunrise. You nod. It's polite. It's pious. It's a mistake you'll feel for the next 6 miles. Because Brother Thaddeus, as he introduces himself with a bow so deep he almost drops his satchel, does not stop talking. Not once. Not when the road narrows. Not when the goose bites someone's boot. Not even when he briefly trips over a root. Writes himself, mid-psalm, and continues as if nothing happened. His voice is steady, mildly nasal, and powered by the kind of devotional stamina normally reserved for oxen. He starts with scripture, then saints, then scriptural saints. He quotes passages with flair, with footnotes, with variations between Latin and Old Church cant. You don't understand all of it. Some of it might be made up. At one point, you're fairly certain he transitions directly from a sermon about humility to a recipe involving dried pears and vinegar. You nod. Occasionally, it's easier than trying to keep up. Others in the group drift in and out of his conversational orbit. Some ask sincere questions and regret it immediately. Some toss him vague affirmations just to keep him going in circles. One simply walks faster. But Brother Thaddeus isn't unkind. In fact, he's wonderfully generous. He shares water. He offers dried berries. He adjusts a younger pilgrim's poorly tied sandal strap with the gentleness of a parent mending a child's toy. And then he launches into the history of that sandal's design, from Roman legionnaires to local cobblers in Norwich. You find yourself simultaneously grateful for his presence and mentally rehearsing excuses to fall behind. But he always waits, always keeps pace. After a while, you begin to listen more carefully. Beneath the flood of words, there's something soothing. He's not performing. He's not preaching. He's just overflowing, full of thoughts, stories, prayers, all pouring from him like water from a clay jug. You realize he's been walking longer than anyone else here. Not just this pilgrimage, but dozens. Hundreds of miles, up and down the country, always with that same slow, joyful rhythm. He tells you of a monastery once built too close to a pig farm, where the bells had to be tuned higher to compete with the squealing. Of a hermit who used to walk backwards for penance and eventually got so good at it that people hired him to bless their homes in reverse. Of a saint who refused to speak for 20 years, only to break her silence with the phrase, "more salt." Historians still argue whether she meant that literally or spiritually. Some think it referred to bland soup. Others believe it was a metaphor for needing more zest in one's soul. You're just glad it didn't come from Brother Thaddeus. Around midday, he stops abruptly and turns to you with wide eyes. "Have I been rambling?" he asks, almost sheepishly. You blink. The silence after his question is so profound it rings in your ears. "No," you say reflexively. He smiles. "Good. Sometimes I forget which thoughts are prayers and which are just noise." He pulls a bit of bread from his pack and breaks it in half, offering you the larger piece. You accept. And the two of you sit on a flat stone overlooking a field of grazing sheep. They baa quietly, as if in worship or irritation. He eats in silence for a while, and so do you. You notice the rhythm of his breath, steady, grounded. You realize you've grown accustomed to his voice, a constant background current, like wind or distant bells. When he finally speaks again, it's softer. "Pilgrimage isn't about reaching," he says. "It's about emptying." You chew slowly. "Emptying what?" He smiles. "Whatever you brought that wasn't meant to be carried." You nod, not because you fully understand, but because it feels like the kind of thing worth nodding to. After lunch, he walks with others for a while. You feel the quiet he leaves behind, not just an absence of sound, but a shift in the air. You hadn't noticed how loud your own mind was until his voice stopped filling the spaces between thoughts. The road continues. Trees arch above you like chapel vaults. Birds hop between branches. The goose has somehow acquired a ribbon around its neck. No one claims responsibility. Later, at a rest stop by a crumbling stone wall, Brother Thaddeus gathers a few travelers for a short prayer. You watch from a distance. Some kneel, others simply close their eyes. His voice is lower now, less performative, more grounded. You catch fragments, for sore feet and softened hearts, for lessons that come in puddles and blisters, for those still lost and those afraid to be found. You don't join, but you listen, and that feels like enough. As the day winds down and the sun dips into gold, you find yourself walking beside him once more. This time, he says nothing, just walks, a comfortable quiet. Eventually, he glances sideways. "You've been very patient," he says with a grin. You shrug. "I had no choice. You talk like a waterfall." He laughs, a real laugh, full and loud and entirely unmonastic. "But sometimes," he says, "the water smooths the stone." You don't say anything in reply, not out loud, but in your chest, something feels just a little lighter. By morning, your left foot has declared open rebellion. You try to ignore it. You try walking gently, then limping, then pretending the pain is spiritual. None of it helps. With every step, the blister announces itself louder, a throbbing reminder that you are, in fact, just a sack of soft flesh inside a badly stitched boot. You stop near a stream while the rest of the group gathers wild berries and mutters about distance, detours, and whether cheese counts as breakfast. Sitting on a sun-warmed rock, you peel off your sock and wince. The blister has reached a state of grandeur. It deserves a name, possibly a title. Sir Throb-a-Lot, Brother Thaddeus, never far, appears at your side like a summoned prayer. "Ah," he says, squinting at your foot, "the blessing of the road." You raise an eyebrow. "It looks more like punishment." "Ah," he says again, as if that confirms it. He rummages through his satchel and pulls out a folded cloth bundle. From it, he produces a small pouch of crushed herbs, a sprig of something that smells like regret, and a small pot labeled, in hopeful handwriting, "Saint's Breath." You give it a sniff, immediately regret it. "Is this safe? Safe," he repeats. "It was blessed 3 times and stirred clockwise under a full moon. Sister Emmeline swore by it." You stare at the ointment. "Did she live long?" "Define long," he says cheerfully, and begins dabbing it onto your foot with the kind of confidence only monks and cats ever seem to possess. It burns, then it tingles, then it cools. Strangely, it helps. Elsewhere, other pilgrims are tending to their own war wounds. One wraps a swollen ankle with what looks like old lace. Another is blowing on a scraped elbow, while a fellow traveler mutters something that might be a prayer or a very dramatic insult toward thorns. The goose woman is treating a sore shoulder with an onion poultice. You don't ask. Medieval medicine, you realize, is an art of bold faith and questionable ingredients. Everyone has a theory, everyone has a remedy, and everyone swears that theirs came from a nun, a knight, or a dream involving bees. Someone claims moss stuffed into your boot draws out the pain. Someone else swears by boiled nettles eaten with vinegar and silence. The singing man says he once met a healer who insisted that standing in cow dung cured fevers. No one volunteers to test that theory. You limp onward. The day is warm. Bees hum lazily through the hedges. A traveler offers you a bit of hard cheese in exchange for a prayer. You give them both, not because you believe in transactional blessings, but because the cheese is too sharp to resist. By mid-morning, the group reaches a modest clearing with an old stone bench and a wooden post carved with images of vines and faces. Some sort of ancient way marker, perhaps. or a half-forgotten shrine. People sit, stretch, remove boots with dramatic groans. The monk kneels beside an elderly pilgrim whose hands are wrapped in cloth. She winces as he unwraps the fabric, revealing cracked skin and swollen joints. Arthritis, someone whispers. Penance, says someone else. Too much bread kneading, says a third. Brother Thaddeus gently presses his fingers to her palm and begins to recite a blessing. But halfway through, he shifts, no longer reciting, but simply talking. You've walked far. These hands have done more than most. They've held children, lit candles, built fires. Don't be angry with them now for slowing down. The old woman doesn't reply, but her shoulders ease. He wraps her hand again with fresh cloth and presses a kiss to her knuckles. You blink, not because you're surprised, but because something in your chest feels a little tender too. Another pilgrim, a man with knees like creaky staircases, shares a salve made of crushed calendula and beeswax. Found the recipe on a chapel door, he explains, as if that makes perfect sense. Was written right under a notice about missing sheep. The goose gets her feet rubbed with olive oil. The owner explains that pilgrim animals deserve healing too. No one disagrees. You sit in the shade and rewrap your foot with new linen. The blister has settled, less angry now, more like a grumpy memory than a present threat. You think of your body, this strange, stubborn vessel that carries you without complaint until it suddenly does nothing but complain. And yet, somehow, it continues. Despite the blisters, the bruises, the sleepless nights and questionable stew, it still walks. There's something humbling about that. You recall a story Thaddeus told earlier, about a saint who walked from Rome to Paris barefoot as penance for cursing at a rooster. When he arrived, his soles were torn to ribbons. But he said the pain reminded him he was still alive. That the journey wasn't about ease, but endurance. Historians still argue whether that saint ever existed, or if he really cursed the rooster. But the image remains, a person, limping forward anyway. The group moves again, and with it, the symphony of creaks, groans, and quiet muttered remedies resumes. You walk beside a man who smells faintly of vinegar and daisies. He tells you he once fixed a twisted ankle by sleeping on it and dreaming of fish. You nod, not because it makes sense, but because everything makes a little more sense when you're walking. By the time the sun hangs high, your foot has adjusted, not healed, but manageable. And there's pride in that. Not the kind you boast about, but the quiet kind, the knowledge that you could have stopped, but didn't. At the next rest, someone shares boiled mint tea. Another wraps her wrist with wool soaked in elderflower. Thaddeus gently corrects someone who tries to eat wild mushrooms with too much confidence. And someone new, a boy, maybe 12, shows you a trick. Tie a ribbon around your thumb to distract from the pain in your foot. You do. It helps. Somehow. You walk into evening a little slower, but steadier. You walk with aching limbs and a strange ointment in your sock. You walk with people who carry their hurts like medals, who share their cures with a shrug and a grin. And for the first time in days, you stop thinking about the pain, because you've learned to walk with it. You don't intend to stop. Truly, you don't. The morning begins with good intentions, clear skies, packed boots, and even a decent chunk of bread that hasn't yet hardened into masonry. The road rolls out in front of you like an invitation, and the group moves with something dangerously close to confidence. But just before midday, the wind changes. You smell it first. Warm oil, roasted cheese, a hint of honey and smoke. Then you hear it. Bells jingling, drums thumping, the unmistakable sound of a small child laughing while being flung gently into the air by someone with far too much energy. Then the banner appears, flapping merrily in the breeze above the trees. A painted pig dancing on its hind legs, surrounded by symbols that may represent crops, or joy, or possibly indigestion. You've walked straight into a village festival. The road cuts right along the edge of it, tempting, colorful, loud. A voice in your head, possibly yours, possibly your stomach's, says, "We'll just pass through, no stopping." But by the third booth, You're holding a fried cheese roll and watching a man attempt to juggle what appears to be a loaf of bread, a spoon, and a surprisingly calm ferret. So much for resolve. The group dissolves instantly. Pilgrims scatter like wind-blown leaves, each pulled toward a different delight. Thaddeus wanders off to examine hand-stitched psalms. The goose woman negotiates the price of a decorative collar. Someone is already dancing in a circle of tambourine players. You try to pretend you're still focused, still serious. But there's a puppet show starting just ahead, and the narrator is using a voice suspiciously close to your childhood priest's. Curiosity wins. You sit on a wooden crate next to a boy munching an apple the size of his head. The show begins with a knight, a princess, and a dragon that looks more like an angry green sock. The plot makes very little sense, involves a magical turnip, and ends with the dragon opening a bakery. You applaud sincerely. Afterward, a round man with painted cheeks hands you a card that says, "Have you considered a career in dramatic expression?" You pocket it, just in case. A traveling bard strums a lute with only 3 strings, singing a song that starts about love, but quickly becomes a rant about taxes. A woman sells cloud candy, spun sugar on a stick that melts the instant it touches your tongue. You buy 2. You lose 1 to the wind. The other becomes glue on your fingers for the rest of the afternoon. Someone in the group, possibly the singing man, convinces others to try the Wheel of Insight, a rickety wooden contraption painted with cryptic phrases like, "Your goat is not who she seems," and "Beware sideways rain." You spin. It tells you, "A quiet man knows too much." You stare at Thaddeus. He sneezes into a handkerchief embroidered with ducks. You move on. At a food stall, you meet a woman selling pies. She calls them blessings in crust. You ask what's inside. She winks. Depends on what you need. You buy one. It tastes like thyme, salt, and something you can't name but somehow recognize. Later, while chewing the last bite, you pass a stage where a man recites a poem about a fox who fell in love with the moon. The rhyme is clumsy, the imagery oddly specific, but you find yourself moved anyway. You leave a coin in his bowl. Someone gets talked into a strength contest involving a large hammer and a bell that refuses to ring. A pilgrim loses a boot mid-swing. The bell rings anyway. Everyone cheers. At some point, a bear appears, a real one, dancing, slowly, tied to a chain held by a wiry man with sad eyes. The bear wears a hat. It looks tired. So does the man. No one cheers this time. You leave a coin in his tin and keep walking. The sun begins to sink. And like smoke clearing, you begin to see your fellow pilgrims drifting back toward the road, blinking as if waking from a strange shared dream. The goose has a hat now. Thaddeus has acquired 3 scrolls and a bag of licorice. Someone has no shoes, but insists it was a fair trade for a wooden flute. You do a quick inventory. Bread, gone, satchel, heavier than before, feet, sticky, head, full of dancing dragons and moonlit foxes. It's time to go. The village fades behind you in soft laughter and lingering smells. You walk slower now, bellies full, pockets strange. The sky goes pink, then gold, then deepening blue. A hush settles over the group, not heavy, just gentle. Eventually, someone breaks the silence. "That pie made me cry," they say. Everyone nods. You find yourself humming the tax bard's song. The goose honks in time. You camp that night beneath a crooked tree that smells faintly of roasted sugar. Thaddeus shares his licorice, which turns out to be terrible, but no one complains. Someone starts telling a new story about a princess who married a cloud. The facts shift. The details blur. But it doesn't matter. It's not about the story. It's about the telling. You think back on the detour, how easily you slipped from pilgrimage into pageant, from solemnity into silliness. And yet, it didn't feel like a distraction. It felt necessary, like the road had breathed out, like you had too. As you lie beneath the stars, you remember the wheel's message. A quiet man knows too much. You wonder if that means you. You wonder if knowing too much is a curse, or a gift, or just another way of saying you've lived. The moon rises. The bear's hat floats into your thoughts. So does the pie. And somewhere in the distance, you think you hear a lute, just 3 strings, just a whisper, just enough to carry you into dreams. The morning smells like promise and horse dung. The group stirs slowly under a sky that can't decide what it wants. Low clouds hang heavy, brushing the tops of trees like a sulking child dragging a blanket. A warm breeze whispers lies of clear skies. But the air carries that particular hush that warns something is coming. You eat your breakfast, dry bread with a questionable smear of berry preserve, gifted by a woman in the festival crowd last night. It's more seed than berry, and your teeth now feel like they're full of gravel. But it's food. You try to be grateful. Thaddeus sniffs the wind and makes a vague gesture that might be a blessing or a complaint. The goose refuses to leave her spot under a cloak, and for once, no one tries to hurry her. Even the birds seem hesitant. You walk anyway. Pilgrims always do. The path curves through gentle slopes, fields gone gold with late summer, and fences too broken to keep anything in or out. For a while, it's almost lovely. You chat idly. Someone starts a limerick chain that quickly devolves into nonsense about pickled saints. The goose trots along, her hat still firmly in place. Then the first drop hits your forehead like a warning. You look up. The clouds are no longer debating. They've made a decision, and it's personal. The rain starts slowly, in teasing sprinkles, just enough to turn dust into mud. Then, without ceremony, it shifts to a full, soaking tantrum from the sky. It's not the soft, poetic rain of pastoral paintings. It's the kind that slaps leaves sideways and turns paths into soup. You're wet within minutes, drenched within 10. You try to keep walking. Everyone does. You hold your cloak above your head like a useless shield. Someone trips in a puddle and swears devotion to the nearest saint with surprising volume. The mud clings to your boots like regret. It sucks at your soles with every step, making that schlorp noise that would be funny if your entire body weren't turning to damp wool and cold ache. Thaddeus still hums, because of course he does. The group fragments, some pushing ahead, others lingering behind. You keep pace with a woman who's using a large cooking pot as a makeshift umbrella. It works surprisingly well, until the handle snaps off and she throws it into a bush with theatrical flair. You reach a low dip in the road, where the path has turned into a shallow stream. A cart lies, abandoned on its side, wheels spinning lazily in the rain. No sign of who it belonged to. The group pauses. No one wants to go first. Then the goose wades in. That settles it. You follow. Water sloshing up your calves, squelching into your boots. Cold, sharp, inevitable. Someone shouts that their left sock has become a swamp of betrayal. No one disagrees. By midday, the rain lets up, not because it's finished, but because it's bored. It retreats slowly, leaving behind a landscape of puddles, drips, and deeply offended cloaks. Steam rises from your shoulders as you trudge up a hill where a crooked shrine sits, partially sunken in mud. Someone lights a candle. It sputters out immediately. You light another and place it beside the first, defiant. Pilgrims gather in silence, dripping, shivering, and then, as if summoned by absurdity itself, the sun bursts through, not gradually, not gently. It blazes. Within moments, it's hot, too hot. You're steaming, literally. The mud bakes into your boots. Your damp wool turns into a portable sauna. You try to peel off your outer cloak, only to find it has fused slightly with your back. Someone groans. "We've angered the weather gods." Thaddeus, wringing out his sleeves, replies, "Perhaps we merely surprised them." The road is now sticky instead of slick. Bees appear, curious and too friendly. The puddles shimmer like lies. You feel like a walking compost heap. The festival pie from 2 days ago begins to feel like a dream. You miss the mud. You pass a field of sheep who look entirely unbothered. One yawns. The goose tries to chase it. The sheep does not move. The goose retreats with dignity. The sun blisters down. Your nose begins to burn. You try to cover it with your sleeve, but it's still damp. And now you smell like wet wool and onion. You accept your fate. Others are faring no better. The singing man has gone silent and is walking with his tongue out. The boy who claimed rain was good luck is now muttering something about curses. Someone claims this is the third worst pilgrimage weather in history. No one has the energy to ask about the top two. At the next rest stop, you collapse under the narrow shadow of a twisted tree that might be more symbolic than useful. Thaddeus shares dried apple slices that taste of sunshine and humility. You accept them without comment. You stare at the sky. It's so blue it almost hurts. Not a cloud in sight. The weather has pulled off an emotional bait and switch with surgical precision. You feel betrayed, but also cleansed. Sort of. Your boots are full of swamp water. Your knees are freckled with drying mud. Your back smells like soup, but you're still here, still walking, still laughing, quietly, dryly, with the kind of laughter that's earned through shared discomfort and the slow acceptance that nothing on this journey is meant to be easy. You think of something Brother Thaddeus said yesterday. Pilgrimage isn't a path, it's a weather system. You'd rolled your eyes then. Now, it feels suspiciously wise. That night, you camp on a soft ridge where the sun sinks in a blaze of gold. The ground is finely dry. Your cloak smells of pine and perseverance. The goose, still damp in patches, curls beside your pack. You sit beside a small fire, drying your socks on a stick, watching the steam curl up like incense. Someone strums a tune on the newly bartered flute. It's off-key, but lovely. You press a hand to your aching foot, and it's warm, not from pain, but from proof, because you walked through rain, through heat, through puddles deep enough to host fish, and you're still here, not clean, not comfortable, but alive, and perhaps, in the strange math of pilgrimage, that's the blessing you were meant to find. By morning, the weather has evened out. Clear skies, gentle breeze, not too hot, not too damp. Which means, of course, the weirdness is due. It begins innocently enough. A quiet start, boots less soggy, fewer complaints. Someone whistles a hymn that gets stuck in everyone's head. You eat your breakfast in silence, dry bread dipped in a little leftover jam. It tastes faintly of basil. That's probably fine. The road forks without warning, no markers, no signs, no locals in sight, just a slightly wider path to the left and a narrower trail to the right that looks like it was made by a determined goat with poor depth perception. You vote left, so does Thaddeus. The goose, naturally, chooses right. Everyone pauses. She honks, once, loudly, and waddles ahead. A debate begins, full of dramatic sighs and speculative logic. In the end, the goose wins, as she often does. You follow, single file, into the thicket. That's when you meet him. He's crouched beside the road, wearing a cabbage on his head like a crown. His beard is full of seeds. He holds a stick in one hand and what appears to be a spoon in the other. He doesn't look surprised to see you. He just nods and says, "You're late." There's a pause. The wind picks up a little. "Late for what?" Thaddeus asks, gently. "For paradise," the cabbage man replies, utterly serious. "But it's fine. It's always moving." You exchange glances with the others. No one speaks. The man waves his spoon toward the trees. Turn left at the rock that sings and right at the silence. He then offers you a handful of walnuts and vanishes into the brush, muttering about a lizard who owes him a debt. You keep walking. No one mentions him. You all agree, tacitly, to pretend that didn't just happen. But the road has changed. Not physically, still dirt, still rocks, still the occasional puddle. But the mood has shifted. The air feels heavier, but not in a bad way. More like it's holding its breath. You pass a scarecrow dressed in bright red silk. Someone's tied a flower crown to its head and a note to its wrist. The note reads, "Good luck on your journey. Beware geese." You glance at your goose. She looks smug. The path narrows further, brushing close to wild hedges full of bees and berries. A pilgrim ahead swears they saw a fox holding a rosary. You chalk it up to exhaustion, or hope. Someone finds a wooden spoon carved with a face that looks disturbingly like Brother Thaddeus. He insists it's a coincidence. The resemblance is uncanny. You walk slower now, not out of fatigue, but curiosity. The world seems tilted, just a little. Like you've stepped into a story being written as you move. A squirrel drops a nut directly into your hand. You thank it out loud. It nods. At midday, you come across a tree with shoes hanging from its branches, dozens of them. Old boots, sandals, wooden clogs, even one delicate slipper embroidered with tiny stars. A sign nailed to the trunk says, "Take a pair, leave a burden." You don't take any. But you do stop. You sit beneath the tree and unwrap the piece of paper you've been carrying for days, the one with your list of reasons for this journey. You read it again. Some parts still sting, others feel distant now, like someone else's story. You fold it smaller and tuck it inside a knot in the tree's bark. Not gone. Just offered. Someone else takes off their old socks and hangs them on a branch. Everyone claps politely. You move on. The trail dips into a shaded hollow where the sunlight filters through like honey. It's quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels thick. Everyone slows, even the goose, and then, just as suddenly, it breaks. A song, not music, exactly. More like a rhythm, a pattern. The wind in the leaves, the shuffle of your boots, a bird's call 3 times in a row. It's not quite real, not quite imagined, but you hear it. You look at Thaddeus. He nods, smiling softly, as if to say, yes, this is part of it. The weirdness grows gentle. You find a stone etched with words in 3 languages. None of them make sense, but somehow you understand it to mean, keep going, you're almost somewhere. Another pilgrim starts humming a tune they say they don't know, but you all recognize it. By dusk, you reach a clearing with a small wooden hut shaped like a boot. No door, no windows, just a bucket outside, labeled Whispers. Inside are slips of paper, each one blank. You leave one anyway. You write, "Thank you for the pie." The air feels lighter afterward. You camp just beyond the clearing. Someone starts a fire. The flames crackle in a way that almost sounds like laughter, or memory. You sit beside the goose, who rests her head on your knee. Thaddeus passes around a flask of something sweet and sharp that makes everyone's ears tingle. No one asks what's in it. You think back on the day, on the cabbage crown, the shoe tree, the music made of nothing, and the sense that something old and strange walked beside you, unseen but not unnoticed. Historians still argue whether medieval pilgrims truly believed in these signs and omens, whether the weirdness was real or just a side effect of hunger, exhaustion, and too many relics shaped like fingers. But belief isn't always about proof. Sometimes, it's about feeling a breeze and knowing it means go. You stare into the fire until the stars come out, one by one, like candles lit across a silent cathedral. And in that strange hush, you feel it again. The sense that the road is alive, that you've walked not just through mud and festivals and storms, but through some in-between place, a thread connecting the ordinary to the odd. Tomorrow, you know, it will return to normal. Or as normal as this journey ever gets. But tonight, you sleep beside magic. And you're not afraid. Morning arrives gently. The light comes first, peeking through trees that feel slightly kinder than the ones before. There's a cool hush in the air, and even the birds seem to chirp in a lower register, as if they know not to shatter whatever spell you slept under. You stretch, yawn, rub the last of last night's weirdness from your eyes, and feel hopeful. Your body is still sore, your boots still damp at the seams, but your mind has cleared. There's a feeling in your chest like you're getting close, not just to the end of the road, but to something else. Someone mentions hearing bells in the distance. Everyone stops. Bells. You all strain your ears. There it is again, soft and far, like a memory you're not sure belongs to you. A pilgrim claps. Another does a little dance that looks like a wounded bird trying to do laundry. The goose honks once, approvingly. The group begins moving faster. energy surging in your legs. You descend a hill, pass a crumbling stone wall, and even the air begins to feel more sacred. Someone claims to smell incense. Another insists this must be a sign. Surely we're almost there. You allow yourself to believe it. A young woman at the front points toward a distant steeple poking through the mist. There it is! You all cheer. You start rehearsing your entry in your head. What you'll do at the shrine, what you'll say. Maybe you'll kneel, maybe just sit and breathe, maybe cry a little. The idea of it, completion, reverence, peace, pulls you forward like a thread. As you approach the village, small details start to emerge. Ivy-covered cottages, a tidy central square, a statue of someone holding a fish aloft like a torch. The statue does not inspire religious awe, but you're too tired to question it. You shuffle through cobbled streets, passing locals who greet you with polite confusion. One elderly woman sells fresh pears and gives you one for the journey. You're so sure she means spiritual journey that you tear up while eating it. Then you reach the church. It's modest, more like a chapel, really. No grand steps, no archway of light, a single bell tower, slightly leaning. The front door creaks open when you touch it. Inside, it smells of old candles and damp wood. A priest greets you warmly and offers a place to rest. You sit, you wait, but nothing happens. You keep waiting for some kind of announcement, a ritual, a sign that you've arrived at the holy site. Thaddeus walks up to the priest and quietly asks, "Is this the place?" The priest blinks. Place? The shrine? The sacred bones? The pilgrimage end? The priest chuckles gently, as if you've just made a charming mistake. Oh, dear, no. That's still a ways off. You're in Dutton, about a day's walk from St. Elric's. A full-body silence falls over the group. You feel it settle on your shoulders, your knees, your back. One day, one more day. Someone mutters a word that should probably not be said in a chapel. Thaddeus thanks the priest. The group stands up slowly, groaning like old furniture. You shuffle outside and sit on the stone steps, chewing the rest of the pear. It now tastes aggressively average. The village square is quiet. A dog barks once and then seems to reconsider. A baker peeks out of her shop to wave, but senses the mood and retreats like a turtle. The goose pecks your boot. You sigh. Then someone laughs. Not a big laugh, not loud or sharp, just soft. A little frayed around the edges. It spreads, one by one, as if the idea of being almost there, and definitely not, is somehow the most perfect way for this journey to go. You sit for a while, watching the wind play with a hanging basket of purple flowers. The bells start again, real this time, close, and you realize they were never meant for your arrival. Just the regular ringing of time, still, beautiful. You refill your flask at a stone fountain. The water is shockingly cold, like it remembers glaciers. You splash some on your face, and for a moment, it feels like the beginning of the journey again. A kind of baptism. By mid-afternoon, the group is ready to leave. No big speeches, no dramatic sighs, just a slow, shared acceptance that the road continues. And so must you. You walk out of the village the way you came in, not triumphant, not defeated, just steady. The path rises again, this time through a patch of wild heather. Bees buzz lazily nearby, and your steps find their rhythm once more. The disappointment lingers, but it doesn't bite as hard. In fact, it feels oddly fitting. You think of a phrase the cabbage man said, "Paradise moves." You didn't understand it then. You still don't. But somehow, it rings truer now. You pass a stone marker with a scallop shell carved into it. Someone ties a ribbon to it. You don't ask why. That night, you camp beneath a tree that looks like it's been waiting centuries for someone to sit beneath it. You do. You stretch your sore legs, rest your head on your pack, and let the stars blink down at you like curious old friends. Someone begins humming again, soft, familiar, comforting. The goose snuggles beside you with a faint snort. And you think, maybe being almost there is its own kind of arrival. Maybe the journey is a circle, not a line. Maybe this pause, this misstep, this unexpected detour, is the part you'll remember most. You close your eyes, not quite asleep, not quite awake, almost there, just right. The final morning begins with silence. No bird song, no chatter. Even the wind seems to have agreed to let you wake gently. The ground is cool beneath your blanket, and a pale golden light seeps through the branches above, casting delicate patterns across your face. For a moment, you wonder if this is it, if you've somehow crossed into the end of your journey during sleep. But no, your back still aches, your mouth is dry, and the goose is loudly attempting to steal someone's oatcake. Reality, still here, still you. You rise slowly, no rush now. The rhythm of pilgrimage has taught you patience, each step a conversation, each mile a lesson. Today, you tell yourself, you will arrive. Your companions are quiet too, packing with soft movements, expressions caught between sleep and awe. There's no real announcement, no trumpet of revelation, just the mutual understanding that the road ends today, and something waits at the edge of it. Thaddeus offers you a piece of dried fig and a nod that says more than words could. The road is narrow but well trodden, curling up the side of a gentle ridge. As you climb, the view opens behind you, rolling hills, the sloping woods, a silver ribbon of river far in the distance. All the paths you took, all the turns you didn't mean to, all of it there, laid out like a story told in footprints. At the top, a breeze meets you like an old friend, and then, in the valley below, you see it, a stone spire, simple but tall, the shape unmistakable, the real shrine, St. Elric's. This time, no one speaks. You all just move down the hill, across the last stretch of dust and gravel, past a small stand of cypress trees that sway gently as if bowing in welcome. There's no fanfare, just a low stone wall, a wooden gate left open, and beyond it, a modest courtyard. The air smells of rosemary and old candles. You pass beneath an archway and into the grounds. The shrine is not grand, not gilded. Its stones are weathered, its roof patched, its windows simple glass. And yet, it has gravity, a stillness that pulls you in. You step inside, it's quiet. Not the awkward quiet of paused conversation, but the sacred hush of something ancient and waiting. You feel it in your chest before you feel it in your feet. The room is dim, lit only by narrow shafts of light from above, and the glow of countless candles lining the edges. On the far side, a small wooden altar rests beneath a sculpture, St. Elric, eyes closed, one hand raised, the other holding a walking staff. He looks tired. You understand him. Pilgrims move slowly toward the altar, one by one, no sermons, no instructions, just presence. When your turn comes, you approach without ceremony. There's no thunderclap, no revelation, just stillness. And a deep exhale you hadn't realized you'd been holding for days, maybe weeks. You kneel. Not because you're told to, not out of obligation, but because somehow the body just knows. This is where you let go. You don't offer words, just silence. You think about the mud, the maps, the moon blaming, the cabbage prophet, the spoon tree, the music that wasn't music. You think of the goose and Thaddeus and the laughter shared under wet cloaks and candlelit skies. You think of yourself, the version that began this journey, and the one now here. Someone touches your shoulder gently, a quiet gesture that says, "You can stay as long as you like, but you don't have to." You rise slowly and step back, letting someone else take your place. Outside, the sun has reached its peak. The courtyard is warm and bright. Pilgrims rest beneath olive trees, eating, laughing, weeping. Some exchange tokens, bits of ribbon, pebbles, a button carved with a face. You're handed a small piece of linen embroidered with a scallop shell. No one knows who made it. Thaddeus sits beside you with a cup of something warm that smells like cinnamon and pepper. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. You take a sip. It tastes like the road. The goose struts past wearing a wreath of herbs. No one knows where she got it. No one asks. Later, You wander the grounds. A side garden hums with bees. A stone bench bears the inscription, "The path is also the destination." You run your hand over the letters, tracing each one like a memory. A bell rings somewhere, low, steady. You sit beneath a tree and close your eyes. The wind carries the scent of wildflowers and moss. Your heartbeat slows, and somewhere between one breath and the next, you begin to wonder, just a little, if this is a dream, if you'll wake in the inn from 3 nights ago, or back in your own bed, with muddy boots beside the door and a half-written journal entry waiting. But if it is a dream, you hope it lingers. Because this moment, this quiet, this fullness, this feeling of having walked the world and come home to yourself, is more real than anything you expected. Historians still argue whether pilgrims truly found what they were looking for at places like St. Elric's, whether the journey changed them, or merely tired them out enough to believe they had changed. But maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's enough to have walked, to have gotten lost, to have laughed in the rain, to have carried something with you and laid it down at last. You stretch out in the grass, the sun warm against your face, the air humming with bees and distant bells. You've arrived, or maybe you've been arriving all along. And now, as the last golden threads of sunlight slip gently behind the hills, you let your body soften. The weight of your pack is gone. The dust of the road has settled. The aches in your feet are quiet now, just whispers of the path you took to get here. You lie beneath a tree older than memory, its leaves rustling with the kind of hush only the end of a long journey can bring. Around you, the world is still, no clamor, no destination calling your name, just peace and presence. You breathe in, you breathe out, somewhere nearby, the soft clinking of pottery, the low murmur of a lullaby in a language long forgotten, the gentle cluck of a wandering hen. The goose snores softly, curled at the foot of your blanket, her dreams untroubled and content. You close your eyes, and for once, you're not looking for anything, not trying to get anywhere, not wondering what's next. The story is done, and the quiet it leaves behind is the real gift. If your thoughts still wander, let them drift like fallen leaves on a stream, carried by something older and wiser than worry. You've walked far enough for now. The moon rises above the chapel, pale and full, no longer blamed, just glowing. And as night folds itself gently around you, you fall asleep. You are safe. You are home. You are still. End of script. Sweet dreams.